Long
I'm doing
time.
great. Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah.
The summers are really a really busy time. However, it's back to school,
Mm,
and I thought since we're at that time of year, it would be a good time for us to talk about finances and money because, believe it or not, we're moving towards the end of the year. And I
mm,
don't know about you, but I remember growing up, back to school was a big thing,
yeah.
mostly because that's when you were able to get your new kicks and your new outfit.
Yeah.
But these days, some families get into financial trouble surrounding back to school. And right now I'm just talking about K through 12, but back to school is more intense when you're sending people to college.
Mm,
And I'm grateful to have two college students this fall. So it's
congratulations, man.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Mm,
A lot of fun.
and a lot
Yes.
of money. So I know.
I'm gonna
Uh,
let you say that. Yeah.
just formally just introduce this is episode 10 of consistency. So we made it to double digits. Um this will probably me and Frank have been discussing is this will be the last episode of this season, kind of. So we'll still be, making videos together. We're just gonna kind of put a rest to the consistency season, and we could bring it back always, but I think 10 episodes is a good, sample size, give us a chance to, change up some of the formats, do some different content. So won't see that it's not the last of us, but we want to end it out with a bang. So right now the final topic was going to be about finances. So I'm going to hand it over to Frank, and then we'll get started. Thank you all for joining.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to treat this as though we were in a class, and we'll probably revisit this topic a few different times with this same format and even the same questions. So I don't know if we're in a position where people can share things in the chat. So I guess in the beginning, you and I'll just have to
Discuss.
banter back and forth with the questions at hand. So here's the first question, and whoever is tuning in, you can ponder this question, and even if you aren't in a position where you can respond now, because I know sometimes people come in and most people watch later,
Mhm.
and then some people are watching while they're driving home from work or practice, just various places people are coming from or going to.
Mhm.
What is the first money lesson that you can recall, and who taught it to you? What's your very first money lesson?
Hmm. Well, for sure, it was my parents who taught it to me. I guess it would be. I think my first lesson in money wasn't necessarily like what my parents used to do. They used to buy me like a transformer or something that I really wanted, like a toy, and then I would have to kind of complete chores in order to kind of earn that toy. So they buy it from the store and keep it like at a high place to where I couldn't get it. And I remember having like a chore list, so I had to complete the chores, and after I completed a certain number of chores, something like that, then I got one toy, and then there was another one that I wanted too, so I had to keep going. So that was something very early on, I remember. And yeah, I think that was like the foundation for me understanding the concept of like working equals some value. So I think that was like probably my earliest memory of like a money lesson. Just like the harder you work, or if you do X amount of work, then you can get an outcome. So because they let me know that those toys are not free as much as I wanted them. So it's like in order to be able to have something fun that I wanted, because they did everything in terms of like necessity. So anything that I wanted for leisure, you had to work for and put in that effort, and then help around the house. So I was doing chores that I saw them doing. So it was like taking the load off of them having to clean something, them having to straighten up after me. So yeah, I would say that would be my first lesson.
That's wonderful. So you made me think about something. So officially, are you Gen Z? Are you Gen Z?
I'm millennial.
You're a millennial. Okay.
Yeah. I'm like
So
one of the last ones. I think it ended in 95. So I'm 94.
okay, you're at the very end. Okay. So I've got a question, and we always talking about the generations on this show, and what makes our show special. As you can see, Dre is totally black. I'm white, so you can already see we intergenerational, right? I'm Gen X. He's a millennial. The knock that, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to address this since you're right on the borderline,
Okay.
and you probably know where this is going. The knock on Gen Z is that Gen Z don't want to work,
Mhm.
and so I'm sure somewhere in passing you've heard statements like that. What's your observation? Where does this come from? How is it unfair? Is it sort of true? What are your thoughts?
Okay. Gen Z, I'm gonna hold y'all down because I understand. I don't think it's not necessarily that they don't want to work. I think they've seen so much work being done, like, because you got to think they were born with the internet already. So that's kind of when people, by the time they were like of consciousness, they were seeing people work from home. So they're seeing all these different types of jobs. So I feel like my generation was kind of some of the last people who had to get jobs like right out of school. Um, I'm not saying that Gen Z doesn't, but I think by the time Gen Z entered the workforce, there were still a lot of millennials occupying those high school positions. So it wasn't really much room for them to get in. And I think a lot of them really more focused on going. I think they might outnumber us in like higher education, people who went off to college. I don't know the statistics behind that, but a lot of the um, Z people that I know are like attended school. So, and I think in school you start to see they're coming up with different examples of money making. So I think before, like a lot of millennials saw rappers as and basketball players as being the money makers, but now they're seeing so many people make money online from their phones and just on the internet that there's the potential that you have to make from doing a TikTok going viral as opposed to what you're making working at McDonald's is, they willing to take that trade off. And even if it's just a couple of dollars here or there, they feel like they still have that ability to control their time. So, I mean, I know a lot of people who are Gen Z who are in the workforce. But I think as you get more to the end of Gen Z, like right when the Alpha generation came along, those are the ones who have really been in the internet era, and also the pandemic. Like once the pandemic hit and they saw everybody kind of move from working in physical locations now to working at home, it's hard to convince them to leave the house to go try and get some employment for money. Like, to be honest, I think jobs where you're staying at home pay more than the ones where you're going to a physical location in a lot of situations. So I
But let
think
me let me let me let me dive in, and I like everything that you said, because it's important feedback. There's a lot of different ideas that are out there. I happened to be talking to a judge this weekend,
Mhm.
and he is somebody that is in authority and hires people. He was one of the people that kind of gave me that feedback that I shared.
Mhm.
That, and another thing, now this is not just Gen Z. This is millennials also. One of the things we hear is that people in the millennial group and the Gen Z, they show up at the job, and the expectation is that they're going to make what the boss is making coming through the door.
Mhm.
And so, is that accurate, or and if that's true, why does that make sense to come into a company and feel confident that you can make the top pay walking through the door?
So for that, I'll definitely say it's because of the internet. Because I just feel like we have so much more access to this information than I think people in previous generations going in. Like before, you don't even know. You just signing up for a job. You hear about the average pay somewhere, but now we're able to look up how much this job is making. So you're like, okay, this job ranges from 40K to 80K or something. So a lot of people are going in where the job's probably expecting to pay them like 39 to 40K, and then they're asking for 50, 60K just because they've done their research and now they want to land in the median. So I feel like that's a big contribution to why you would think, or why we're coming in with such a high asking price. Because I mean, I understand, working in companies where people have been there for a lot long, like 20 plus years, and a lot of them may have started off super low and are now at a decent now making a decent wage after being there for so long, and then they're not thinking that somebody else coming in new should earn that much money. But that's kind of where times are, because these positions have to still be able to kind of keep certain people to a certain level in society, or a certain income status in society. So um like for developers, I know people who've been at a company for, probably came on making 50,000 20 years ago, which was great money. Well, maybe not great money, but decent money when they had started, if they were starting around, my age or something. So a good salary during the time. But with inflation being so high, it's like, yeah, you're asking for a high number, but it's still not necessarily getting you everything that type of salary would have gotten you back then. Like I think so many people kind of come out, like at first you never would have thought, or you thought that you don't get a six-figure job until you're 10 years into your career, if you're sticking at one career. But now you can, a lot of people coming out of college making six figures pretty simply. So I think it's more just an inflation thing. Like a lot, it's difficult to say why, like, we have that. I think the what would the word be for it, that kind of like, not arrogance, but that feeling of like wanting to, of having that status already. It's like
So let me chime in there. So there's a couple of things.
mhm,
One of the things that, and I was just talking to my friend about this a couple of days ago. One of the things that I admire about Gen Z and the millennials, and the Gen Z is on it even harder than the millennials, is this idea that I don't feel like I should be obligated to work 30 years for this company. I feel like I want to maximize the opportunity, the benefits that's here.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. So here's the balance to it because, again, I appreciate that. And there have been companies that I can look at in the past. I've been entrepreneurial since my 20s, and I'll go later on, I answer the initial question for myself. So I've always had my own thing going on. However, I've also worked jobs, and they've been jobs that I've been loyal to to a fault. And
Right.
that's I don't see that same kind of error happening with the Gen Z. However, this is what I've observed as somebody that hires people to do jobs.
Mm.
You have to hone your craft. So even those people that you see, going back to the statement you were making earlier, people who become TikTok rich, most of the people who become TikTok rich are people who are trial and error. They are grinding. They have figured it out. They're putting the sweat equity in to become competent at whatever it is that they're doing. Now, you might, just like hitting a lotto, you always have those outliers.
Mm-hmm.
You might have that those one or two people who just had this video that went nuts. But by and large, those people who you see, and if you can have a conversation, and we both probably know some of these people, if you can have a conversation with those people, they will tell you that they've been grinding. They've been they're working, they've been
Mm-hmm.
studying the craft, they've been talking to people. And so one of the things that I think is not as popular today as it was 30 years ago is this idea of apprenticeship and saying, okay, I want to be an understudy. I want to learn everything that you know because yeah, to I may make a little less doing that initially, but after I know what you know in short order, I'm going to make more than you're making because of everything that I already know in terms of technology and otherwise. So somehow for me, that part is the disconnect, the understanding that, okay, let me be consistent since consistency is our theme. Let me
Mm-hmm.
show some consistency at excellence in doing this and let them see me consistently doing this right and decide that I'm an expert. Because in sports, in
Mm-hmm.
most industries where we have the GOAT conversation, like we were having the GOAT conversation around rap and music some
Mm-hmm.
weeks ago, almost everybody that we put the GOAT crown on, they've been consistent
Mm-hmm.
and they've been putting the work in. We're not talking about hit and miss
Right.
because even those people who we talk music, because I know you know a whole lot more of the more recent artists than me. There's some people who have shown some talent. They may have had a hit,
Mm-hmm.
but most of us would agree that they'll never get the GOAT title because they don't have enough work.
Right.
They may have gotten to a point where they made a lot of money at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But now to talk about the ultimate of what we're after in this conversation, to get down to that legacy wealth,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of wealth that probably your parents know about, my parents know about, I know about, from what you told me you know about, there is the consistency piece. And I'm seeing that that's a missing link.
Mm-hmm.
Missing link with a lot of people.
Okay. Yeah. So actually, when it comes to that, I feel like we have to look at how, especially in the Black community, we typically get jobs. So we're not in some of the industries that we're occupying or kind of leading a charge into. We're not necessarily going in knowing anybody. Like in most of the job, I had one job where I was kind of put on by a former friend, but other jobs I kind of came in through recruiters. So once you have a recruiter in that stance, then you're really more looking at it as a business aspect, because there is no real apprenticeship. Like, you kind of have to come in knowing everything that you have to do for the job. So no one's there to teach you how to do your job at a lot of these companies that people are working in. So you're looking at it like, okay, well, this was my skill set that I came in and was using to help this company. And now you're seeing that this same skill set is also in demand at other companies. So now, instead of continuing to hone your craft here at this company, you'll take your talents to a place where you're getting more better compensated for it, and then start to, like, you're still honing your craft, but now you're just getting paid more while you're doing it. And I mean, that has its pros and cons, but ultimately I think that's what mostly kills the apprenticeship aspect of it, because there's so little space for people to, I don't really feel like the industry or industries right now are looking to teach anybody for the long term. Like, and a lot of people know that they're just as disposable as these companies. Like, they'll find another employee, and I think that lack of like personal relationship with people's employers, since these companies are so big, it's like, yeah, you don't even know half the people that you work with. You're working with hundreds and hundreds of people, and you're a lot of times your paths don't cross. So trying to find mentors within a company is difficult, and I don't feel like we have enough, like, probably established companies within the community for people to go in and learn, which I do think would be more beneficial in helping us grow.
So that is important, and I believe that some of the people who are listening should position themselves, because there are people, there are Gen X, there are millennials, and that's one of the things that brought us together. One of the things that I admire about you, you have been paying it forward. How I met you was you was in the community offering to teach computers, and so paying it forward so that if more people did that, we would get further along.
Mhm.
But I remember having a conversation with one of my mentors, and he's since gone, and I'm not going to name drop. I've been blessed to be mentored by some of the best, and then some of the best have been mentored by me. Like, for an example, one of my students was on the great food truck race this past season.
Mhm.
And because of something called an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, there are different things that my hands have been on that I can't even talk about.
Mhm.
But one of the things that my mentor said to me, because I was asking him, and he was a boomer.
Mhm.
If he was still alive, I think he would be touching 90 or something like that.
Mhm.
Very gregarious person. But anyway, I said, hey man, what do I need to do to be next up? And he was known for using some colorful language. He said some words to me and said, and
Mhm.
you nope, there's nobody standing around passing no batons out.
Mhm.
Like, you need to be in position and grab the baton. And so for those people who are listening, here's the reality. Nobody's ever been standing around trying to give you their job, because ultimately, if people are focused, and we're talking about money, even though some people want to say, oh, I want to talk about 401ks and all that. If you listen, we're talking about money right now.
Mhm.
There's never really been this situation where people are standing around trying to give you their job, because once they teach you, if it's a job, you're the next man up.
Mhm.
What happens is you show that you're interested in being next man up. Now, Everybody's watched shows like The Wire and all those shows like that. I don't know why people think that something changes when you go on to the legal workforce, because in the street workforce, there's an understanding that you got to get it out of the mud. You got to show that you ready to be the next man up.
Mm-hmm.
Take those hits. It's the same thing in the marketplace. You show up early, you leave late. Now, again, I know that people are kind of taught to put the lifestyle first,
Mm-hmm.
but the lesson that your parents taught you way back when with the toy was, no, you put getting your work first. Because the first thing now, to take it to the book, the first thing that Adam got was a job. Hey, your job is I've given you this beautiful place. Your job is to maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a missing piece. There's this idea that the person that's going to mentor you is going to knock on your door. No, 90% of the time it's you looking, okay, this person looks like he's on his game. Maybe I could take this person out to lunch. Maybe I could offer this person to have a cup of coffee with me.
Mm-hmm.
You initiate that. You take an interest, and now this person said, "Oh wow, this now." Not to be disparaging, but the person, if they're senior to you, they may say, "Okay, this kid right here seems to be impressive. Let me see. Maybe I will share a few things."
Mm-hmm.
And then if they see you implementing the things that you were shown, then next thing you know, they done taught you this and that. Here's a movie that I'm going to recommend to everybody. You may have seen it already. It's called The Black Godfather. It's the story of Clarence Avant. If you want to understand how money works, watch that movie. Clarence Avant was in an industry that he wasn't supposed to be in, and the part of the industry that he was in. And so he was fortunate to be taken under the wings of a giant in that industry, and the rest is history. You name it, all the who's in entertainment, they call him the Black Godfather, Clarence Avant.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he took the initiative to show that he was proficient. He has some proficiency at doing something. Here's the thing, and yes, perhaps the Gen Zers have more degrees than any of the other groups, perhaps. But what I learned in college, and one of my friends, Leote Blackman, she shares a tip that she got from I think it was her aunt or somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Her aunt taught her that you go to college to learn how to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this big fancy degree, this title. All that degree has done is prepare you to learn. Now you can learn.
That's something my dad say all the time.
Yeah, you don't really know anything. Now you have the potential to learn. So now you could go in the marketplace and learn from somebody that's really doing it. But you showing up with a degree, thinking that because you have this degree, you know what you're doing. Oh, you're now in a position to learn how to do what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Right now, I kind of feel like when it does come to young people seeking, I don't feel like anyone is really seeking out mentors, because I don't feel like anyone has a desire to do anything. Honestly, like in terms of all of I think they see issues with all occupations. So there's nothing that, like, I have my nephew over here. There's nothing that he's about to be a freshman in high school, but at this moment, there's nothing that he's necessarily dying to do. We asking him, what would you like to be when you grow up? He doesn't And that's like pretty consistent across the young people that I talk to. Everyone's just like, everybody just wants the money. Nobody really necessarily cares about a career at this point. And so they'll do a little hustle here, a little hustle there, as long as they got enough money. So nobody's really, to my knowledge, really that career focused. So I think that's another reason why nobody is seeking out mentors. Even me, like at this point in my career, I'm not really looking for uh, a mentor in software development anymore. I was looking for one earlier on in my career, but one, I don't think I knew exactly what I was looking for, and two, there was nobody who I knew who was doing what I was doing. So since I was in a new field, um, really didn't have I wouldn't say I didn't have the option to have a mentor, but I just didn't know how to go about getting one at that time. So I think as more people, are completing school and just trying to figure out what's the best way to get money, they're like, well, okay, I can get on at this. They're looking at it like, because now college is almost the introduction to a certain level of income. Like, yeah, you can get the standard jobs graduating from high school, and if you're lucky and know some people, that's kind of more of the only other way you're gonna elevate in society these days. Like, some people do get lucky and stumble onto a open position, and then they have their chance to work up. But a lot of people not trying to spend 10 years working at a low level position to get to the VP and then go like, that's kind of something like, I don't even hear them talking about that in school. And this is different professions. Like my sister, she's in accounting, and she's she's one of the only people who I know, in terms of like they have a career path for them. Like, she's a CPA, or I hope I'm not messing it up, but she's in accounting, and then like, so her next step would be to um kind of go private, or work for a company by herself instead of working for her firm. And so, she has more of a career path than I would say me, because at my point, I would just go to like higher levels as a developer, or just like more senior, which is cool, but I'm not necessarily. I don't see development being around for that much longer, honestly. Like, I see that job is one that's on the, I wouldn't say on the brink of extinction, but as we know it today, I don't see people being able to get to the next level of wealth just working one job. Like, you have to. I think the job is good until you can set up what else you want moving forward. But yeah, people, you can be content with where you are, or you can kind of prepare yourself to, you have to do something for yourself. If you're working for a company, you're gonna be kind of limited in how much wealth you can build.
So here's a very important tip, and I hope this helps everybody. And maybe the course of our conversation was supposed to go this way, because anybody that's tuned in the past, these conversations are very organic. Now, don't get me wrong, I do have a notebook with notes. I have a script, but we don't just follow the script. We just let it flow. We could do it. Don't think I just wandered on here. I got notes. So one of the things that I learned about the highest achievers is that every one of them that I've met, they all had a mentor.
Mm.
So it just is. They had somebody who they could call and whose brain that they could pick. I've got more mentors that I can count on my digits, because you can have a mentor for your career, then you can have a relationship mentor. Let's say that you're looking to take that next step with your lady. You might say, okay, what's a couple that I can look at and say, okay, what's a man that I can talk to has, who seems to have what I want in a
Mm,
relationship, and now this person has become your mentor in that area.
mm,
LeBron James, to my knowledge, was the first basketball player to become a billionaire, to my knowledge. If there was somebody else before him, I don't know.
well,
But
man. Michael
yeah,
Jordan. Yeah.
yeah. But um, he decided to, the guy's name just went out of my head. Bill Gates buddy.
I don't know any Bill Gates friends. I should.
No, the financial guy, the stock guy.
Warren Buffett.
Well, Warren Buffett, right? So Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, is LeBron James's money mentor.
Mm,
And so my point is that any area where you decide that you want to be a dominator, then get a mentor. Now, if you just want to, if you're in an area where you just want to touch it lightly, then maybe you don't need one. Now, the areas that I'm in,
mm,
that I'm known for, like, and that's the other thing. A lot of times people get confused because they look at a person like LeBron James, and LeBron James, his hand is in a lot of things. But if I ask anybody, what is LeBron James? They're going to say a basketball player.
mm,
And his success as a basketball player has allowed him to spawn and do several other things. So if
right.
you have to say, okay, what is FLW? FLW is a teacher. So in some places you'll see me as FLW, the teacher. So me being an educator for most of my career has positioned me to do other things,
Mm,
and I do a few things, but that's my that's my thing. And so I would tell people and people who are super talented struggle in this area because they become over stratified
mm,
and they're doing all kinds of things. But I'm telling you, the people who become known for being the best is because they focused in a particular area and became the best in that area.
mm,
Then allow their success at being the best in that area to put them in other areas. Like if I said Rihanna, and we both know that Rihanna is into fashion and cosmetics.
mm,
But when we say Rihanna, we think music. And her success in music is what positioned her to be in those other areas.
right.
And so I know a person right now that is very talented and is struggling tremendously, mostly because this person's just way over stratified, trying to do too many things at once. And one of my mentors say the main reason why men fail is not for a lack of talent, it's because of broken focus.
Mm,
And we're talking money because the people who are the highest earners, almost to a man, you will find that they have focused on something and they became expert at that thing. And then they branched out from that thing.
mm. Yeah, I think honestly, yeah, speaking about with broken focus, I think that's a big culprit of it because we have so many options and like I said, we see so many different ways to make an income. We're just kind of hopping from one to the other, waiting for one to really stick and just land us the big bucks. But that's another reason why we go into so many like, okay, well, we're expecting this much because it's like, well, if you're not going to give me that much, then I can go over here and get that much. It might be a completely different field or something, but now people are just chasing more of the money. But it's survival time because right now there's such a limit on all types of jobs, not even just corporate level jobs, low level jobs. Like it's hard to find a part time job for a lot of people right now. And I kind of just see that trend continuing. I don't really see a lot of these jobs continuing to be around to where you can just get a job that pays $15 here, $15 an hour. It's on like, especially if they move. I feel like if they move minimum wage up, it's really getting it's getting scary out here because I did just recently hear that they're in New York. I think some restaurants are um, like outsourcing being the cashier to people into Tijuana for like $2 an hour, something like that. So yeah, so it's coming quick to where people can't get these jobs that are gonna, but at the same time, these jobs aren't they can't pay enough to sustain anybody in America. So it's like those jobs do have to get outsourced at this point because of the price of living here. Like you can't live on $7 an hour in most places. Even in Georgia, that's for a high school student to just get some clothes money. But yeah, you can't be a grown adult making $7 an hour here because there it's not gonna cover anything. You can't have any place to stay. And if you are fortunate enough to have a place to stay, then you're certainly not eating and you can't afford a car. And so you kind
So
of
Dre, here's the point that you're making, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's a trick, and in my other work, we would say it's a trick of the enemy. This idea that whoever they are going to make things right for us. They are not going to make things right for us. Now, the one thing that I have to, again, give Gen Z and the millennials a lot of credit for is this interest and willingness to try different things.
Mhm.
However, the consistency piece is, I think, and that's how we ended up starting off with that topic. That's the part that may be missing. In other words, yes, I've decided I've taken an interest in this.
Mhm.
How long are you spending with honing your talent in that craft before you give up on that craft and move on to the next shiny thing? Because I'm gonna tell you this: now
Mhm.
you're in technology, and you see this, and I know this. First, I'm gonna share this. I was teaching a class on the Georgia Tech campus a couple of years ago. It was
Mhm.
a money class, and as I walked on the campus, I looked around and I noticed that most of the people that was passing me, who were students, were from somewhere in Asia,
Mhm.
predominantly, right?
Mhm.
And then you had some European Americans, of course, and maybe if you came across 20 people on that campus, a half a person was so-called African American.
Mhm.
Now, what is happening? Because we know that the ability to do math and science also rests amongst Black Americans. But why was there such a dearth of us on that campus? There's something to say about us putting a direct focus in getting involved in STEM.
Mhm.
Us talking it up, and then making a concerted effort to get in the game and do the work to stay in the game. Because in order to get on the Georgia Tech campus, you had to prove that you belong on the campus
Mhm.
by putting in the work in advance.
Right.
And then if you want to get into these high tech companies where you can make 90 to 150 coming through the gate, you still have to have proven yourself somewhere. So again, we're talking about consistency. One of the things I say to my sons who, well, one of them just left teenage, one of them just turned 20, I think. My math is good. Yeah, 20. One just turned 20. One just left the teens. But I always tell them, yes, Gen Z has the technology, but then you have to spend the time with the technology to figure out how to work it in such a way that you can make money from it rather than you just being a consumer. Right now, from my observation, most African Americans, as Malcolm would say, so-called African Americans, so-called Negroes, know enough about the technology. Now you're an outlier because you're one of the experts. Know enough about the technology to be a consumer. We're not talking about that. We're talking about knowing enough about the technology to be a dominator, to make 100K from it.
I think when it comes to, I think with the technology and people getting so much information on technology, that's another reason why they feel they can switch industries so easily, because they have, like, people have the ability to look up, find influencers who are telling you, oh, this is a day in the life of being a project manager. This is the day of the life being this person. So it's like they can just put in a simulation and like, okay, I could see how that goes. And it's kind of, once you're in the job force, you kind of see that, all right, you can take skills that you were doing here and apply them here. So I think that's a big reason why you see so many people job hopping, like, and it just goes back to, I think a lot of us have been given that that mentality to never settle, really. So, if we're never settling for any of these positions, or you don't settle for when you feel undervalued, that's what's causing people to switch and flip-flop so much when it comes to these different job positions. And at the end of the day, we know that we're disposable, so we always have to be, or we've seen so much layoffs and job losses, like we always have to be prepared to be ready to get the next thing. And a lot of times you might not be able to stick in your industry because jobs might have ran out in your industry. Like, if you weren't ever able to make a pivot at our stage in our job careers, for most millennials, it's like, yeah, if you don't have the adaptability to change careers, then you're going to be very hard pressed to find the same job paying the same amount that you were just making. Because if you choose to just stay in your industry and don't get another certification or do something to add to your portfolio or your resume, then you're going to drop in the market instead of getting anything else. So you have to be able to make a pivot, or switch industries in order to survive out here and in order to sustain yourself.
Now, I do believe that for some of us, we can make ourselves very difficult to fire, very difficult to let go. And so part of what I'm going to challenge some of us to do is to be so good that whoever's in charge will hurt letting you go. And that's possible, because I have been on jobs where people around me were let go and they couldn't afford to let me go because they was going to lose a lot of paper if they did. And so what a story that one of my mentors likes to tell, because it's a two-sided coin. He had hired this lady to basically be his office administrator, excuse me. And so on this particular day, she had filed all of his papers and stuff, which we know a lot of those, a lot of the files are electronic now, right? People don't hardly file papers anymore in the office. But anyway, she had all his files messed up.
Mm.
He couldn't take it anymore. He fired her. Here was the problem, and this is for those of us who are on the side of hiring and so forth.
Right.
After he fired her, the office became like a funeral home
Mm.
because he didn't realize what it was that she brought to the office.
Right.
And a few days later, he regretted firing her because what he realized was that he had given her a job that didn't best suit her talents.
Mm.
And so on the there's another side to this, that those people who are listening, who are employers and hiring people, do enough due diligence to understand who this person is and make sure that you put that person in the right place. Because if you take a star and you put that star in the back room,
Mm.
why? Because a star is meant to shine. You want to put the star up front.
Mm.
And so I think that, yes, you may have a lot of other people getting drained around you, but it don't have to be you, because you can decide that, hey, I feel sorry for y'all, but they need me. If I leave here, it's going to be because I left, not because they fired me.
Right.
And in today's environment, and I know in a future show, I'm excited about you really drilling down on this AI thing. I'm gonna take a back seat and listen,
Mm.
because this AI thing is already changing the whole game,
Yeah.
which is to the point that you were making earlier. And I as much as AI is being talked about, hardly no one understands the impact of AI. AI is about to wipe out entire industries. And
Right.
once again, I'm concerned. I think some people have fallen asleep at the wheel. They're just kind of goofing off, and you're going to be hungry in a minute. You're
Yeah.
not going to be able to eat. You're not going to be able to buy no beans, because you could see that the price of basic food is already through the roof. You
Right.
go in the supermarket, you just want to get a drumstick. One drumstick is $6.
Mm-hmm.
So you waiting for, I'm I, I'm gonna pull up, but I'm just saying, these politicians, they making they making promises, but all I'm gonna tell you to do, keep your eye on AI and make your necessary adjustments. I'm gonna let you talk a little bit on that.
Okay. Yeah, with this AI coming in, I know I've said in the past, like, you have to be the person who, you have to use it in order to stay ahead of it. And that's still very true. But at the same time, with the rate at which things are coming, you may not have enough time to secure a new lucrative skill set in time, because I feel like my industry, it's not necessarily being wiped out to the point where companies don't need developers or anything, but the number of developers that a company would need in order to remain sustainable, and I'm talking about big companies, um, that is shrinking. And with the AI getting so advanced, is going to be to where anybody who has their own business can almost utilize the AI for, as a developer. So, but that's why you have to kind of have your own business plan or business model that you want to execute and then you have to utilize the AI as your workforce moving forward. So there's a lot of things that humans aren't really wanting to do, or they're not trying to spend their time doing XYZ, even if it's moderately simple. A lot of it, like if it's keeping track of employees, or like an office data entry job, simple data entry jobs are on. uh, you can't really underpay somebody for that, because it does require so much brain power from a lot of people. Like, you think you could get somebody doing data entry for $15 an hour, and then somebody's going to be like, no, this is way too much work. Once you really, because you also have to remain productive throughout. You have to find new ways to remain productive in a lot of these systems. So it's like, okay, and then that's how a lot of people get led to burnout, because I think that's another thing that's been underlooked, is how much burnout a lot of Gen Z and millennials go through by performing at high levels in order to to make themselves want to feel valuable at a lot of these jobs. I see a lot of people burning out because they're trying so hard to show, because now you have to prove that you're being productive a little bit more, I think, in the workforce. So it's like, it's not even necessarily the work that you're doing, but you have to have the results ready for at any time if somebody asks you, oh, show me what you're working on. So it's like you're trying to remain, and I find myself dealing with that more. It's like you're searching for other things to do, other things to be productive on, so much that, I mean, you can get your job done, but when you constantly under, you feel like you're constantly under surveillance of, and somebody's always about to ask you, oh, what you working on right now? How long is that gonna take you to get done? So it's a different level of stress that you're kind of under, and that surveillance it's tiring. So at the end of the day, you worked 8 hours, you like, man, I've been being watched for 8 hours, making sure I didn't sneeze wrong, this, that, and the third. So I think that's where the burnout aspect of this current system that we're in is affecting people, and also affecting, so because if people feel like they're under stress or they're being micromanaged 24 hours of the day, a lot of times they'll ask you to, they'll start the meetings a little bit early, they'll end them a little late, so you're giving all these little minutes places. Are you like, oh, I need to be paid for this? So it's stuff like that. So it's still a struggle going on within our current workforce. It's just transformed, and now it's morphed into different ways of stress, and the stress looks different. So it's like, I'm not coming home, I'm working from home, like, I'm not dead tired, like I've been lifting things all day, but mentally I don't want to think of one other thing. I'm not trying to hold another idea in my head. I just want to watch TikTok or something.
So Dre, you just explained something to me that I didn't really get until you said it, because I've heard that kind of feedback from particularly millennials and Gen Z. And you're right, because of technology, and you used the perfect word, surveillance, they do have the ability to keep up with you in a way that wasn't possible 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the problems that technology has created, like I know some high level executives, and they're expected to respond to text messages 24/7. They
Mm-hmm.
get, because with some of these, especially in the medical field, and well, in any of these international industries where you're dealing with people in China or you're dealing with people in India, they're in a different time zone. So you're getting text messages in the middle of the night,
Mm-hmm.
and you might try to get your inbox down on a particular day, and by the time you wake up, it's already big and hefty all over again. And
100.
so, to your point, some people feel like they are working nonstop and under surveillance at the
Right.
same time, and that's tough. I can see that, and so thank you for sharing that, because that is a stress that wasn't there. Now it's a two-sided coin with that in some respects, because um, I was with a manager last week.
Mhm.
He was sharing that he had a group of people on a night shift at the job, and he just showed up unannounced. And he never said whether he was shocked at what he found,
Mhm.
but people, people just, they were supposed to be working,
Right.
but people just lounging, sipping beverages. I wanted to ask him whether somebody had lit one up, but I didn't have the courage to ask him that. But
Mhm.
he was so disturbed by the scene. He called the person who was supposed to be managing them into
Mhm.
a separate office. He said, "When I return in the morning, I want all these people to be gone."
Mhm.
Fired, he fired about 30 people on the spot. And so I I wonder. I think it's two sided. You've got those people who are natural micromanagers,
Mhm.
but then you also have those people who have kind of messed the game up and create micromanagers. Because I wouldn't be a natural micromanager, but at
Mhm.
the same time, I'm not going to sit around and let you just goof off, and I'm paying you this amount. And I'm wondering why, if I budgeted this amount of time to get a job done, why it seems like it's getting half done all the time. It's because you're waiting to the last minute to start working because you goofed off
Right.
for the first 6 hours.
Mhm.
So it's just like, a lot of people don't know this, but part of why it feels like trying to get your immigration documents to rent a car now is because of criminals.
Right.
What happened? I think it happened. I think it. What I'm about to describe happened in Atlanta. These crooks took a whole bunch of rental cars, using different schemes,
Mhm.
and that's part of the reason why now, in order to rent a car, you have to have a major credit card. You have to be this age,
Mhm.
blase, blase, blase. And so sometimes people who have acted badly, they create these systems necessary to respond to those bad actors,
Mhm.
you know. So
And then, so in those situations, so now say you have a hard worker in a bad environment now. So now they're being micromanaged, even though they're doing all of their work. So now that's a whole nother stress. So
yeah,
now they got to get out of that situation. And because now they're hypersensitive to the fact that they might be, and they got to make up for this person's work. So that happens on all levels. And so, you know, a lot of the people who you don't see as maybe being consistent at a particular job, they're like, if I continue to perform at this high level, knowing that other people around me aren't doing so, then I'm getting burnt out. So, and that's where, and then when you add in black people working in these different forces, now you feel like you're hyper focused on, because you feel like you're representing, and you don't want to be a bad representation for your people. So that adds a whole, that was one of the first stresses that I realized. And it wasn't even necessarily that anyone was focusing on me more because I was black. It's just how you kind of naturally feel when you look around and you're like, okay, well, what's the difference between me and them? It's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I am black, and so it's just like I'm one of the only people. You don't have anyone else to, kind of measure or compare yourself against, in those regards. So it just leads to, and it's mental. So, you don't really have anyone to talk to. That's one thing where, a mentor would come in handy for people who are new in the industry. But, when you don't have that, then you're kind of forced to take on all that stress on your own.
And to your point, there often is, especially if the people who are in management haven't had any exposure, and that's why DEI is so important.
Mm.
They haven't had any exposure to working with people of color, because in your industry, I can imagine you might be deployed to Idaho, South Dakota. You can end up anywhere.
Right.
And so if you go to some part of the world, you've been deployed to some part of the United States where there is 2 Black people in the whole state, it can be rough sledding, because all they know about Black people is a couple of episodes they saw on The Wire. So
Mhm.
now, they're looking at you like, is this person going to rob me? They're not sure if you're capable of actually doing the work. They think that DEI got you your job, so you're not really capable of doing the work. You got on, you got into college on some kind of BS because they had to let you in for a quota. All this stuff is floating out there, and you have to prove. But here's the reality. I have found that in most of the cases, and of course you've got those people who really didn't qualify that end up in certain spaces, but typically I find that if you've got a Black person who've gotten hired, they're one of the most qualified people in the place, because they've had to do so much in order to find themselves in that space.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Especially in your field. Now, in these other fields, social services fields, not it may not be true, but in the specialized fields, usually if you find a person that's Black that has made it into that position, it's because they've had to work to prove themselves at every level up to the point where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that if you got this other person, whether they be Black, white, or polka dot, who's not getting it done, you might want to either help them to get it right, or not spend a whole lot of energy in association with that person, because at the end of the day, if that person is the right complexion, the assumption is that they're capable.
Mm.
And now the energy that you should be taking to further your craft, they might invite you, that same person that's halfway doing their job, they might be inviting you to all of these different happy hours and opportunities to goof off.
Mm-hmm.
But the penalty for goofing off is going to be harder on you than them. So you also have to understand how the game works.
Because that's also another whole different aspect of what it means to climb the corporate ladder. Because some people, their climb is at the happy hours.
That's right.
And from a relationship standpoint, that also goes back to how we get onto a lot of these jobs. So if you got on because your father worked at this company, and then you got an internship early, and now you just kind of working there, as opposed to you just are a random hire through a recruiter. Like, they use recruiters, so they have limited liability on if they got to let you go. So, you're there for, okay, well, they don't even want to fire you directly. They go to the recruiter and like, okay, this ain't working out no more. So it's no longer, just
right. We're not going to be able to keep your guy.
Right. And the recruiter's job to come tell you, like, not gonna continue with you.
Wow, that's dirt. That's true, but that's how it is. Yeah.
On this, so and yeah, that's just one thing that I've grown to like. And as more people elevate and get into higher positions around me, like it does get easier to bounce back because hopefully your network is growing and people in different places, and you can leverage your network in order to get new positions. But for a lot of people starting out, they don't have that luxury. I know I didn't have that at the very beginning, or I'm probably had more opportunities than I was aware of. My parents would always tell me to reach out to these people, which, when not knowing what exactly I wanted to do, I never felt as comfortable reaching out. But like I said, it wasn't necessarily like I was dead set on a career. I was just trying to take what I learned and use it to get paid. That was more how I was looking at it. So, if I was able to get paid by building websites for people, I would have much preferred go on that route. But, just at the rate that things were going with me, with my entrepreneurial route, as opposed to how much I was not making by not going to a 9 to 5, the opportunity cost was just outrageous. So that's kind of how I got here.
And you raise a good point, and you were alluding to this earlier, and in some companies, clearly nepotism rules. I think that as a company expands, even where a lot of that takes place, again, those people who decide that they're going to be stars, you can become a part of the family. Because if you're a star and they realize that if that company is about making money and they realize that you're a big part of that, then you become a part of the family. That's how that works.
Yeah.
And let's face it, part of what we should be trying to do is figure out how to put our family on and build and build. And we're going to dig more into that the next time, because I am concerned, and you raise a good point, that a lot of young people just seem to be wandering. You ask them, I remember when I was in elementary school or when I was in elementary school, you'd ask the class, oh, I want to be a fireman. I want to be this. I want to be that.
Yeah.
And then, you, for the most part, even right up to high school, people had an idea of what they wanted to be. But you're right. Now, you might ask a young lady or a young man what they want to be, and they can't really answer you. And again, when you think about building, and that's why studying people like Booker T. Washington is so important, because you had Du Bois, who was the intellectual, and say, okay, get it here and create it that way. But I think we got to look at it from both sides. Booker T. Washington said, what is it that your hand can do? And any people that plans to stick around needs to be diverse, because people are always going to need some place to stay.
Mhm.
So ultimately, any true society needs people who can build, engineers, carpenters, plumbers. Those are still necessary fields, because if your toilet backs up right now and it's severe, you need a plumber.
Right.
And so we gotta change this, because everybody can't be a YouTube star. And the fact is, only a small percentage of people are going to be a YouTube star. So I remember during my generation, they had to tell us, hey, only a small amount of you are going to the NFL. Only a small percentage of you are going to the NBA. You know why? Because there's only an X amount of seats. And back when they were saying that to us in the 90s, they were recruiting primarily from the United States still.
Mhm.
But now the whole world is competing for those few seats in the NBA.
Yep.
So if you're investing all of your energy in trying to be the next LeBron James, you better spend your whole life in the gym because you competing with the whole world. So you eating popcorn and just chilling out, and you just going to show up on the court on game day to perform. You are not going to the NBA. And if you think you're going to be a YouTube star and you wander onto the internet when you wake up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you are delusional. And you get ready to be very hungry.
We live in a time of delusion, man. I will not lie to you. People, and it's not so much that they want to be delusional. It's just that the people's success is what's being marketed. So, they do believe that they have the ability because they're like, oh yeah, all you need is one viral moment, one viral TikTok, and then you'll get brand deals. And they hear that and they like, oh yeah, well, if I can just make it there, then they'll do a little quick gig until they get their TikTok career off, their YouTube. And there's so many different platforms. So you tell them, oh well, I might not be a YouTube star, but I could be a Kick star, or I could be a Twitch star. So there's so many different platforms that people kind of turn to when they want to they don't want to work. So, or I wouldn't even say don't want, because you do still have to work. It's a different type of work, but the people who don't want to necessarily decide on a working career, I would say. But even now, I see a lot of influencers like letting people know that I can't sustain myself full time doing content creation anymore. So they're like, this is still just a side gig. It's a lucrative side gig, which I think a lot of people should aim for. I mean, this channel isn't monetized yet, but if it was monetized, then it could be a very lucrative side hustle. So people I think a lot of people also want that multiple streams of income, so kind of avoid having to lean so heavily on their one job that's probably not paying the highest salary. So people will just everyone's trying to protect themselves.
So this is going to be my next to last word.
Okay.
Those people who fantasize about being the next TikTok sensation, and you're not putting in the sweat equity, you're not getting the right equipment to actually do that, you're no better than the people that I have to stand in line behind for 20 minutes because you got the line at the register tied up, goofing off with those scratch offs. I'm trying to buy gas. And you're standing at the register for 20 minutes, goofing off with the scratch offs.
It's a good analogy.
So, how many of you have gotten rich off of those scratch offs? So, you're in your mind, you're going to get rich as a YouTube sensation, putting in the amount of effort that you're putting in. You might as well go goof off with those scratch offs.
But honestly, what the differences between the scratch offs is that with social media, it does require a certain level of consistency now. I think about that. The people who are consistently on every day, they're growing their following. Like, they might not be talking about much, but if they see they're getting 100 people to tune into their Instagram live a day, they might not be getting paid off of it, but in their mind, like, that's another thing, because the clout now has become like you can monetize your clout. So if you can draw 500 people to your live every day, then they're saying, well, maybe I could get a brand deal, or some people will leverage it like that. But then that leads you to the trap of now you have to really trade your whole life for because now people want to know what you're doing 24/7 now. You have to make sure that you're, presentable. So it's a whole extra cycle that it does require consistency, but a lot of people don't. But then it gets back to your life's under surveillance 24/7, just like at one of the regular jobs. So now you really can't escape that feeling of always being watched and all. Like, so now I look at that as almost worse, trying to be an influencer right now, because you really have to give up your whole life to make any type of money consistently. So
And that was my whole point in making that analogy, because I work with somebody right now that's trying to get it out of the mud as an influencer. And I learned exactly what you said, that you, before they will allow you to be considered X, you got to have X amount of followers.
yeah,
So you still have to put the work in to have those followers.
yeah,
So people, again, some people are delusional. They think that they're going to hit it big with this one video. They never got to the point to realize that you can't hit it big until you've got a certain amount of followers. They haven't even taken that step to know that.
right.
Well, man, this is another good one. And I think we have to do a better job of circulating these, because there's some people who could really benefit from this information. People who are really struggling, they don't even realize how much they're struggling until they hear the information that we're sharing. So I'm going to work to do a better job of sharing this, and in the future months, as we look to monetize this and take all of this to the next level, we'll also eventually get to the point where we provide links and stuff in advance. So we're taking our time and getting there. Right now, we just agreed to do this to be a part of the solution, pay it forward, get the information out. But we're gonna ratchet it up a little bit in the coming months. So keep your eye on us.
Yep. Yeah, we're gonna definitely cut this one up. We got some new AI technology helping us do some edits, getting some TikTok videos. I think there's a lot of valuable information in this one that can be cut up and distributed. And really, the views we got on TikTok killing what we get on YouTube, and that's only from a couple of videos. So
okay.
That's one of that's technology right there. So we made it 10 episodes of consistency, and I think that this is a great time to just kind of end the season. I think things do need to kind of have a stopping point, a place of reflection. We've grown a lot. People who watching have grown with us. So we thank everybody who's watched and continue on this journey with us. And we'll definitely have more to come. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We
appreciate it all, and we'll see you guys next time.